So, welcome, Representative McCann. Michelle, good to have you back here. I think we scheduled 3 copies with our legislators. Really glad to have you here. So, I think what we'll do today, again, we'll give you some time, just some opening remarks. We're 2 weeks into the session. How's it going?
You want me to go first?
I don't know if you want, yeah, ladies first.
Okay, I'll go first. So thank you all again for coming to these. We both, I know I speak for Brandon on this, it's so appreciative to hear from the people. And it's so important for us to be able to get back home, to listen to what you have on your mind, what's important to you. Let me just share a little bit. It's been a little slow going in terms of legislation, but it's been a whirlwind of a lot of change and a lot of new things happening. And so we can argue good, bad, or ugly, but it's there are a lot of new things that have taken place, a lot of movement in some committees. I sit on the Commerce and Welfare, or the Commerce Committee, Health and Welfare Committee, and I also sit on Agriculture and Affairs. And all 3 of those committees are extremely important to the people here in this district. We have not met in Commerce. There's not any legislation yet, but there, I'm hearing there will be, so we can talk about that. Agriculture and Affairs, we've got a few things coming. Something in that area I'm working on continually is fighting to get additional seats for our large vets, whether it be at WSU, whether it be at Utah. We're working really hard with the University of Idaho, who in turn is working with Utah to see what we can do. Funding is going to be an issue, and we probably won't get any seats funded. I'd like to see it grow into kind of a whammy-like program that we can, because we are becoming to be a crisis in large vets across the state. So that's very important to this district, important to all of the ranchers, farmers, and so I'll continue working on that. And in Commerce, another bill that will probably go through state affairs, but is on, we've talked at the chamber at length, the liquor licensing kerfuffle that the state has created, that I am again working with other legislators to try to get some more licensing, and hopefully we can talk about that. So there's a lot of great things, but the budget is the big thing on the mind of everybody down there. And so with Representative Mitchell being on JFAC, I'll let him kind of share what they're hearing, and then I'll talk about what we're doing in health and welfare, because the governor has asked us to cut 22 more million out of the health and welfare budget. So with that, I'll let Representative Mitchell take the stand.
Thank you, Representative McCann. So Representative Brennan Mitchell, I'm here in Moscow. I sit on JFAC. That's the big committee that I have. I'm also the Vice Chair of Transportation and Defense. And then I've got a couple of little committees here and there, one of which kind of had a big deal this week. It was the America 250 committee that I'm the co-chair of that. And pretty big deal out there in Boise. We had a big fanfare over a resolution that we did. So we've got some really good things going for that. So it's an exciting year to try and, I want to build people up, bring unity. Let's try and build our nation up as we celebrate this big event. As far as budgets go, that has been the big thing. I don't have a lot coming through transportation defense yet. We've got a couple of minor corrections that the department needs fixed on, so nothing major as far as that goes. Haven't seen anything else big, but I do think we're starting to see a list of bills starting to show up, so I think we're going to start really ramping up. I appreciate the chamber inviting me out to this, and I let her know, depending on how this session's going with budgets and stuff, it's kind of tough to pull away and walk away for a little while, but I want to make sure that I can come to as many of these as I can. When it comes to the budgets, we did set our number early this year instead of waiting until late last year. And we've looked at a couple of different things that's really kind of important to recognize. And I think that the one big beautiful bill that was passed at the federal level is what kind of affected, we all seen the news about how bad our budget is and how low we are and whatnot. And I think that's starting to rebound. December was a really big month for us, which is really good. And I think from what I've been hearing from different people, the big thing was all about the R&E. R&D, R&E, they've changed the name of it. And it used to be they had to amortize it out over 20% each month or each year for 5 years. The one big beautiful bill says you can take it all in one shot. I think that's what happened this year, and that's why we took the deficit that we did when we pulled in. However, like I said, in December, we're really looking good. We made up a lot of that in December, and I think that that's the direction we're gonna keep on going. So numbers are, I mean, it sounds gloomy, but I think that they're doing a lot better now, and I think we're gonna be okay. So I know the governor's asked each one of the departments to keep the 3% cut in there. We're looking at ways that we can manage it. My whole goal is how do we move money? If there's somewhere that we don't need it anymore, we can move to somewhere else that's gonna do better. That's what my goal is. And so, but I'm glad to be here. Appreciate the invite and the ability, and I appreciate everyone coming out because that's important. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna open up the questions and be mindful, you know, we've got about 45 minutes-ish. So keep opinions down, questions up. Looks like a good start. BJ.
Thank you for coming. It's always interesting to hear from you. There will be a bill coming before you, sponsored by the Idaho Sheriff's Association and Idaho Association of Counties. And I think there are some legislators also getting on board with that. But it will allow local option tax for jails and courthouses. And as you know, Latah County lost their jail. We're transporting many times a day prisoners to Lewiston. It's very expensive for the city of Moscow and for Latah County. This local option tax, I think, is a good solution to that. It does not cost the state of Idaho any money. It helps us pay for our own jail. A local option tax, Moscow is the retail center of this whole area. So we're gonna draw people from other places to help us pay for a jail. In addition, we'd like to put property tax relief in with that. And that way it doesn't really compete with school bonds, and it's better for everyone. I would really appreciate your support.
Can I speak to that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I ran a bill last year, as you know, BJ, and we really tried to get that over the line. And so I really appreciate that the counties and the sheriff's department is stepping up, because I think with more voices, will make a big difference. What I proposed last year was basically what we had already had in law that had a sunset that allowed your community to say, we want to, you have to vote it in for a local option tax. And if it, I don't know where the cap might be, but we want to keep it somewhat confined. Lewiston did a 0.5% a local option tax and was able to build their courthouse. They were the last entity that was able to utilize that particular bill. And I think that it's extremely important because you all get to make the choice. A 0.25% of the way it was set up went to tax relief for everybody, and a 0.25% went into the pot to pay for your jail, your courthouse, whatever. So I'm on board. I will be championing that. I know there's several other legislators, we've been working on it, and so thank you for your support too.
Thank you.
Well, what committee like that, you see that kind of flow to?
Revenue and
Revenue
taxation.
tax, okay.
Go through revenue tax. So, and BJ, or it's called a treasurer. I appreciate that question because there's been some misinformation being spread around Moscow, which kind of bothers me. And it's that I've been told that I'm the one who's holding up the local options tax, and I can't do that. I'm not on any of the committees that are there. Quite frankly, what I'm always talking about is I need to look at the bill before I can say, yes, I'm jumping on board fully, because one bad word in the bill can throw the whole bill off. And so I want to see what that's all about, because quite frankly, I'm not opposed to it. If we need to do something with our jail, and I agree with that. And so I'm not opposed to it, we just need to look and see what the bill actually looks like. So if you have language, I'd love to take a look at it, but we haven't seen any of the language yet, so until we see that, I can't really jump on and say, yes, I'm full go until I actually see what the language looks like. But yeah, I'm not opposed to it at all, we just need to make sure that's done right.
Thank you.
Thank you, good, great question, thank you. Karen, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
With the budget crisis that we have, a major contributing factor was the tax cuts that were passed last year. And I would really like to see the legislature consider repealing those tax cuts. This would reset our budget to a more doable level, so I put out that request. The other thing is those tax cuts were kind of aggressive, which is also unhelpful. Related to that, and this is a health and welfare thing, it's affecting some of my family members. And especially with the Medicaid expansion, which is 10% state money, 90% federal. Kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. I would like to see that preserved. I would also like to see a full accounting when I hear and read about the proposed cuts to help balance our budget. They talk about this will save this amount, this will save this amount. The thing that's missing that I think is extremely important is a full accounting of the costs associated with those cuts. The, I guess you could say unintended consequences, or the transfer of those costs to other entities within the state. I'd love to see that fully accounted for in numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, and that was a lot of questions in there, but
A lot of questions.
I'll try to
Basically,
tackle
request
just
one.
one or two. And so on the assertion of the repeal, I don't see the appetite. I understand what you're saying completely. Many of us were talking about the possibility of just, I mean, for us at home, we have to rein in our budgets, we have to rein in our spending, but we also have to rein in how we're calculating what can we do for revenues. And so, you know, some of us are saying that this budget crisis is self-inflicted. So how do we fix that? And so several of us have requested, let's rein it in and maybe put a trigger bill when our revenues get back and we reach this, or let's just put a pause. But I'm not sure that's going to get very far. And I think Representative Mitchell can also agree that there are folks that probably will not support that. But I understand completely, Karen, what you're saying, and we are very concerned about it. Health and welfare, which I do sit on that committee, has been asked to look at the budget and find $22 million. And so there are probably there's 7 of us, I guess, that have really diligently been working and digging in, and I've learned a lot about how it's all structured. And last year, if you remember, it was my first year, or first session that I sat on health and welfare, and it has been a deep dive for me, and I'm learning so much every day. And so we have some proposals that we're hoping that will get some traction that looks at not actual cuts, but possibly, I mean, that 22 million, if we need 22 million, then I think that 22 million needs to be proportionately divided and not only out of health and welfare. Health and welfare's already taken a 4% cut to their providers and a 3% in the areas, in the budget, or most areas. And so there's a program that is called the ACT program that some of you are probably familiar with, where they have folks that actually go out and help our most vulnerable people that might be schizophrenic, might be bipolar, and if they're not on their medications, they are a danger to themselves and to our communities. We've already had 1 death as a result of not having this program in place. So I am looking at the budget to find dollars and dollars from wherever that because I want myself and another representative are bringing a bill back to reinstate some of those. And that one in particular, there's a peer support group, there's a whole lot of things that got chopped because they were the low-hanging fruit. And you know, in health and welfare, there are certain budgets and certain programs that are not touchable because they're federal, and federal mandates those programs. So that left a smaller percentage that we could look at to make cuts from. And I think that's why that happened. But so as Representative Mitchell said, the numbers came in better. We're hoping to see January do the same thing. But again, I understand. We created this, it became the perfect storm with the big beautiful bill coming, because we have to figure out how we're gonna conform to that. And there's a lot of talk about numbers, from 155 million to maybe 300 million. And so that becomes a very big challenge. But thank you. I trust that my heart is with you, and we're trying to cut where it is reasonable. It's not reasonable to me to cut the legs off of these programs that are for our very most vulnerable citizens, that are our neighbors, they're our friends. So call me, write me, as we work through this process, being only 2 weeks in. But we are taking a deep dive, the members in that committee of health and welfare. We will work with JFAC members and try to see what we can do together to make reasonable cuts, because the budget is big. But we'll, as we go on, there'll be more, and I'll be talking about this in my newsletter, and I'm gonna leave a paper for you to sign up if you'd like to get the newsletter. So, Representative.
Thanks. Yeah, Brendan, serving on JFAC.
I am.
Yeah, so
And
again, you got the economic outlook, the forecast,
Uh-huh.
which was a little more optimistic. But yeah, the devil's in the details, but it sounds like you already have a target. So it may be a kind of a different process, cadence with JFAC this year?
Yeah, it is, and then this year, so the governor put out his recommendation. There's a lot of things in there that we're looking at. He's got a lot of cuts in the health and welfare area that we're looking at and saying, okay, is this really something we want to cut, like the home-based business or the home-based services? So we're really kind of taking a deep dive in that. I can let you know that she is looking at her budget really, really hard. I've stopped by her office 3 or 4 times this week, and we went through a couple of different things that I've seen. There's a couple of areas that we do need to look at, and a lot of it comes into, I don't want to say waste, fraud, and abuse, but there's a lot of things like in our daycare systems. It's not that we have a problem out there, but one of the things that, well, we do have some problems. They've found, the health and welfare's found some problems. They're trying to get those under control. But last year we put $14 million there, and they used 1.9 million of it. And so this year they're saying, well, we need 16 million more, and it's all federal funds, but we need 16 million more. And so we're saying, okay, let's back up a little bit, because the way that it's supposed to be used, it's not being used. So our goal this year is, let's say we give them the 15 million back, say, okay, this year you're gonna use it the right way. So we're gonna pull that 14 in, put 15 back in, and say, now you need to use it the right way. And so that's gonna save some money as well. And then we'll start seeing, some of the things that I've dug into. I found one daycare that I was really, really concerned about, because I downloaded all the sheets and was looking at them. They're located in Nampa, but it says they're serving a school district in Iowa. And so I'm going, wait a minute, why is that happening? So there's a lot of questions that we're asking about from health and welfare to dig into. They've got their fraud people looking at it to find out what's going on with it. So there's gonna be a lot there that I think we're gonna be able to pull out, and that'll save a lot in the long run if we can find those type of things. But as far as the budgets go, basically we're gonna have maintenance budgets. There's a couple of different asks, and then we'll see where they go from there. But yeah, it's definitely a different year this year.
Good, I think. Kathy, you had your hand up.
It was answered,
Okay.
already answered.
And then.
Yeah, last year,
Okay, go ahead, Earl. And
last year we, following the federal policy, we formed a DOGE committee. And they just recently brought out a report, they found a commission that deals with Hispanic affairs that they thought maybe we could get rid of. And I think it was a couple $100,000, pretty minor. And it went up before a committee and got voted down. So my question is, what else has DOGE found? And are there really, or is this a symbol of the fact that it's really hard anymore to find any waste in state government?
Well, as far as that goes, there's a couple things. So they recommended that we do a Medicaid expansion repeal. That's not happening. We don't have enough appetite. However, we do have the appetite of looking in and saying, how do we fix the problem? Because Medicaid expansion is eating itself up. It's grown so much higher than we ever anticipated that it would. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we fix the problem so that those who need it the most will continue to get it. Those who don't need it can actually get out and do their, go with their own system and their own plans. As far as the Hispanic affairs, I think it's like 85,000. It's not a big chunk. And I think, I'm not sure what happened in that committee that day, because it died on a 7-7 and it was an actual RS, so they never even had a discussion about it. And so that's something we do need to discuss. When they talked to the lady that's over the Hispanic Affairs Commission, she actually said, no, we can raise the funds. Just can we raise it right now? And I think that's what they're concerned about is do we kill it now or do we give it a timeline and say, okay, you raise the funds over the next year and then next year we'll take care of it. I don't know what the answer is on that, but I think that the Doge Committee came up with some ideas. The governor took some of those ideas and put it into his budget requests, and then we'll just see where it all lands up. But like I said, we're only 2 weeks in. We're still trying to figure all that stuff out. So
will we see a report from the committee then?
I think they've got they have one, and I think it's on
done
the
a few
website.
interim reports
Yeah.
already.
Yeah. I can get one to you.
Kathy?
Thank you both for being here. It's really, I know it's hard to get the time, so I appreciate that. When I read about the proposed cuts from the governor's budget and elsewhere, there's Medicaid cuts, there's keeping the 3%, there's all the things. I never see any conversation about mitigating the $50 million that was designated for vouchers for giving state money to private schools. Where is that in the conversation? Is it in the conversation? If so, where? And then the follow-up question is, where is the lawsuit fighting that?
I'll take that question. And so there has been no talk other than from some of us who felt that there should be a pause, that they should have to take a 3% hit as well as everybody else. But I think that there were many that are saying, let's wait and see what happens. The lawsuit, I went yesterday and listened to the Supreme Court argument. So it was in front of the Supreme Court. The court dug holes on both sides, and by saying, what about this? Do the people that brought this lawsuit even have standing? That was a big question up front from some of the two of the justices. And then there were probes on the other side and saying, if the Constitution says A, why are you not doing? Why do you think this doesn't follow that? And so, that it's really hard to tell if you've ever sat through a Supreme Court argument, because they do ask questions, but you're not really sure if they're asking questions because it's for them or questions because they wanted to get out and have a bigger discussion. So there were folks on both sides that were saying that we're going to win, it's frustrating or whatever. I think it's a wait and see. I think the court will make a decision as soon as possible, I would say. A lot of times it takes them months, but I think they're going to speed this process because they know that we've had 5,000 families sign up for, or close to that, to sign up for the $5,000 tax credit. So we'll have to kind of wait and see, but I don't think you'll see any legislation trying to repeal that right now. So I think that they're wanting to wait and see, but that's where that lawsuit is, and I understand the concern on both sides. So thanks for the question.
And I would agree with kind of what she said there, but I would recommend, if you've got an hour of your time, go back and watch the court case. I watched it yesterday too, and it's really interesting to hear the arguments on both sides. And so,
It was on Monday, right, the oral
it
argument?
was yesterday.
Yesterday.
Yep, so I would recommend going back and watching it, and I think that's probably one of the reasons why the legislature's not doing anything with it right now, is just to wait and see what the court says. Because we had a similar issue come up a couple of years ago on prorated property tax, and we decided to just hold off, let's wait until we find out what the court says. And so that's where we're probably gonna be on that until they come back with a ruling. But it was an interesting conversation they had, so I do recommend going back and watching it again.
Thanks. Any comments from the Moscow School District, one of the?
Obviously, I have a vested interest in how it turns out. My main question would be, are there gonna be limits on how high the voucher funding goes? Is it gonna stay at 50 million, or is it gonna grow like we see in other states, and eventually public school funding just dwindles away?
Well, I think making it quick and easy, I don't think there's any, especially this year, there's not gonna be any appetite for it, so I don't think it's gonna go anywhere this year. I don't see it happening anywhere down the road, but you never know with the legislatures in there, it just depends on who's there.
Right. Good question.
Could I ask a follow-up question, Paul?
Sure.
So will there be the same kind of safeguards in place to monitor fraud and abuse in that system as there is in the welfare and daycare, those sorts of things?
You know, that's up to the state tax commission is going to randomly look at what folks have said and what they're turning in. So there's a lot of question about that, Kathy, and but it's something that I think there'll be legislators knocking at the door of the state tax commission to make sure they are following up with that, because they'll want to make sure that it is not fraud and that it is actually payments going to for tutoring, for school books, for tuitions and those kinds of things. One of the questions that did come up in that was maintaining a system of public schools, you know, a public school system, and saying how can maintaining if we don't have any oversight. So that there was real question about that with the court on that other side, but then again, there were questions of standing and is this case even, should it even be before us? So, but those are questions that all came up on the floor when we were arguing whether the bill should go forward, so.
I think one of the interesting things though is what I think, I could be wrong, but as I see it, if the court comes back and says that they didn't have any standing, it leaves it open for another lawsuit down the road. If the court comes back and says that it is constitutional, that kind of ends the conversation on it. So it'll depend on what the court comes back and says. But it was interesting listening to the argument about a system, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, we talked a lot
you've
about.
got, you know, if you're maintaining a system, it doesn't say that you can't have a second, is one of the arguments, right? The other one is, you can only have that one.
And what happens if the court says it's not constitutional?
Then it goes
It
away.
is repealed,
Yeah, it'll be
but
repealed, yeah.
then they'll come back with something different. But anyway, maybe we'll.
And there was a Utah case
Oh, yeah,
that threw out a similar kind
Yeah.
of
they
program.
did.
But what was interesting is they kept on bringing up, because in California, in their constitution, it's very specific, you have to, you could only fund this one. Ours doesn't say that, so it was kind of an interesting argument. So I would recommend it. It was really interesting to watch.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
a lot of media right now. Great, good, thank you, great question. Over here, Colleen.
If someone does want to watch it, where do we find that?
You can go to the Idaho Supreme Court, and they've got archives and video archives and stuff. You can log in there and you can find it. It's probably gonna be the top one because it was just yesterday, so you're looking for yesterday's date.
Awesome, thank you.
And there's some good media out there, although maybe some bias, but Idaho Capital Sun, Idaho Education News, again, the Statesman's pretty good about coverage, Tribune here as well.
Well, and if you look up on Facebook, I know that Mountain States Policy actually
Yeah.
posted the whole thing. So it's open for you to find it there and see the whole thing.
Thank you.
So yeah, there's a couple of them out there.
And that's a good segue, Mountain States Policy Center. So we've seen two public policy surveys recently, one from Mountain States Legal Foundation, Mountain States Policy Center, and then the annual Boise State University Public Policy Survey. And if you haven't gone out and seen that, they do a really nice job. About 1,000 respondents, 42 of 44 counties, asking a lot of questions. They just recently released that, and 46% said the state's headed in the right direction. That's down a bit, but still, I think the concerns there, it's the economy's stupid. Economic outlook was one of the major concerns. Third-year housing was one of the top priorities. And then education was number 2, tax relief, and then transportation infrastructure. The Mountain States Policy Center findings, again, they like the state's trajectory, but continue to press for more reforms, regulatory as well as tax. Education spending, accountability, and then housing affordability was listed there too. So have you had a chance to look at either of those? I mean, Brendan?
Yeah, we have. They actually, Mountain States Policy comes in and goes over it all with all the legislators in the Lincoln Auditorium, so we kind of get to see their perspective on it. And then we'll have other ones come into our office. I just had someone come in the other day that has a new one, poll that they put out. And it was kind of interesting, but he says it's not released yet, so you can't say anything. So I can't say anything about it, but it was kind of interesting to see what they came up with. And it's a little bit, you know, it used to be that property tax was the big thing, and I think that that's kind of shifted to some other items. So once they release that, it'll be kind of cool to have that out. But looking at that, I've talked to the Mountain States policy people quite a bit, and they've got, one of their big things is always, how do we take care of the taxpayers? How do we, you know, protect them? And so I think a lot of that comes from their poll. The nice thing is that they poll Republican, Democrat, hard Republican. They kind of poll everything, and then they can all break it down for us so we can actually see what the majority of the people are looking at and where they land.
Yeah, they had about 600 they polled.
Yeah.
So, good. Okay, hang on, Karen. Okay, let's ask for others. Want to ask questions? Oh, GT. Yeah.
So just continuing on with housing, I mean, this week at Davos, the president found a way to have a small conversation about housing as part of the American dream and public policy surrounding that. So knowing we're in Idaho, public policy can shift pretty similar directions as the president. What ways would you foresee being able to kind of tackle the affordability of housing? I work with a lot of first-time home buyers or friends my age that are late 30s, early 40s who say I can never afford to own a home because of price, cost, and a variety of other reasons. And then I also work with people later in life looking to sell their homes who look at the cost of selling their home when it comes to capital gains that they'll never be able to afford to pay the capital gains and buy the home that they need. What sort of appetite, I hear that that's a big piece of the problem. What sort of appetite are you seeing to kind of either make first-time home buyers more affordable or make it easier for long-time home buyers to alleviate capital gains taxes that they're gonna have later?
So I'll start, because I used to be on the business committee also. One of the things that we heard from all of the contractors is that we're overregulated still. And the regulations is what's causing a lot of the prices to go up, and that's causing a lot of the issues. So in Idaho, we're the least regulated state, but we still have a lot that they're saying, we gotta figure out a way to cut some of those regulations
Is
down.
it both state and
Huh?
local? Both state and local regulations?
Well, yeah, both state and local, I'm sure, but yeah, the big thing is we gotta deregulate, because that's the big thing that we hear from all the contractors. It's driving our prices up. Sometimes I had one contractor tell me that he has to have 3 or 4 different inspections on just one portion of it, and he's just like, it slows me down, I can't do things. So I think that's one of the big things that we're looking at, and I know that we've got a business committee right now that's really digging into the regulations and the rules and stuff, so that'll help bring that side of it down.
Gordon, before you start, did the interim study committee on housing, Ollie Raub's committee, have they presented yet on
I
their
don't
findings?
know. I have not
I haven't
seen
it yet,
it.
okay. Yeah.
But other things that were talked about at times in the Commerce Committee was some incentivization to builders to build some lower, I don't want to call them lower end, but lower cost homes that would be able to be more affordable. And so if a developer comes in to develop an area, there might be some tax credits that could be offered for them to build lower cost homes, those kinds of things. And so again, there would be a tax policy that would have to run through the Revenue and Taxation Committee, which is kind of a tough committee to get things through sometimes. Because, I mean, for good reason, we don't want, it shouldn't be easy, but it needs to be reasonable too. And so, we're looking at everything, and all those talks are on the table, and I'm really anxious to hear what that interim committee comes up with. I know that there were some, both Democrats and Republicans on that committee talking about it, so hopefully it, we'll see policy coming to our committees. So thanks for that question.
And just to let people know, it was an issue during the city council campaign. Housing was one of the priorities. Affordability, attainability, workforce housing, et cetera. So we'll see.
Yeah, and we have to see how those connect, because if the state is keeping our cities and our counties from changing or updating, we need to talk about that, so that we need to maybe help so that cities and counties can do what they want to do. What the local option tax, for instance, that is regulated from the state, and even if the city wants it, right now they can't do it, so.
But the legislature never preempts local government, right?
Oh, yeah. Our county commissioners and our treasurer can talk to that, yeah, right.
All right, Bill.
Most of our experience with building has to do with local people. Unfortunately, it appears to be an adversarial proceeding sometimes when you're trying to get the local people to do the inspection or to come out or to give you what you need the first time instead of on the fourth trip. And it's not so much the state, it is the attitude of the local people that they're adversarial to you and that you're trying to run something by them.
And I'll just caveat that we're not, yes, where we live is in Nespers County. So we're not talking about Latah, so I just wanted to make sure
But I
everybody
think
was.
some of the rules actually go through and deal with a lot of that at the state level also, and we have to approve the rules for it, and so that might have something to do with it as well, so.
Okay, Tom, I'll get to you. Yes.
Thank you. I would like you guys to address Medicare or Medicaid and the potential cuts to it, having to do with our state budget. I'm really concerned. I'm really concerned about hospice care. I'm concerned about vulnerable children and adults, rural hospitals, which is really important in this area, especially for all of us that live in the teeny tiny areas outside of Moscow. And I'm overly I just don't know what to do. I have for example, and here's an example I'd like you to address. There are parents of children, adult children that have disabilities, and those parents have to stay home and take care of those children, even though they're adults. And I don't want that going away. And I don't want some of the other things going away because we have to cut 45 million. So I would really like to hear what both of you have to say regarding that. Thank you.
So again, sitting on Health and Welfare Committee, and that's what we're right now, we were tasked as a committee to go through the entire budget, and everybody's taking parts in that budget. And so a group of us that are like-minded got together and said, we need to, let's help each other. This is a big process, and it's something that many of us have never sat on JFAC. So to really dig deep into the weeds, as the representative said, I've been really spending a lot of extra time because I want to understand. I want to understand where each program sits in which budget. And so the Medicaid budget in itself is probably the largest budget in health and welfare, just on Medicaid. And so, and there was talk, the DOJ committee said they'd like to see a repeal of Medicaid expansion, and which the dollars and cents don't make sense to me when we talk about it, a 90-10, even if it becomes an 80-20. I mean, we don't know what the federal government's gonna do, and so for us to repeal that right now and all the people that would be impacted. So is there bloat? Is there people that really are able to work and they're not? Those are the things we need to find out. That to me is the job of our health and welfare department to go look at that. There's areas for me that I would rather see, like health and welfare. Why are you, if you have a child born with a severe disability that's a lifetime disability, why are you making them come in and re-up every 6 months, every year? Because that doesn't make sense. The disability is not going to go away. So that is something we could shift the cost from there and use it elsewhere. And so I am really looking hard and serious at any of those programs that affect the disability community, because that is where there is a $22 million budget on disability. And so I think it would be easy for some to just say, okay, cross that off, move on, we're balanced, and let's go home. But that is one of the budgets that affects the most vulnerable, the people with severe disabilities, whether they're mental disabilities or whether they are physical disabilities, that they need 24-hour care. And if they have an 80-year-old mom at home that is trying to help this child, they need help. They can't do it. They can't lift these people who are adults. And so I have a cousin who's was born and had cerebral palsy because of a problem. And so I have seen it firsthand, and I know that that is so critical, and I have heard from these people. And so we are really working hard to find other areas, and if we have more money and more revenues come in, then I'd like to see us reinstate some of those programs that they just chopped, and then look at other areas. And if there is a Minnesota problem in Idaho, we need to find it, for sure. I mean, is there? I don't know. There's talk that there are some that have signed up and are getting grants for daycares that aren't really in existence. So if that is happening, we need our fraud folks to get on it and go out and actually go inspect and look. So those are things that we can do and find if that is really there. So, but we know realistically we have to balance our budget, but I don't want it to be on the backs of the most vulnerable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think I'm gonna start a little bit backwards, because she brought up the daycares, and we have found fraud. It's not as rampant as it is in Minnesota, but we have found some fraud. And the problem that we're running into, from the way that I understand it, is that it's the county's responsibility to take and root that stuff out and handle it. And the counties don't wanna take up the time. And I'm not saying here, because I haven't seen any here yet. Most of it's down in the Treasure Valley and down in the bigger areas. And so we're looking at a way, how do we get that under control? So I think that we can fix that. As far as the Medicaid expansion goes, until we have, if it was my bill, I could talk all about it. But until we actually see an RS and see it introduced, I really can't talk about it. But what I can say is that what I've heard so far of what they're proposing is going to fix it to protect things like what you were just talking about. The problem that we run into, a lot of business owners, I don't know if you guys have the same issue, but one of my problems is I've got employees that says, oh, I've got to go home because if I go too many hours, I lose that. And so that's kind of the concern that I have, is that we've got too many people that are taking advantage of it. And so our goal is to, let's see if we can't weed those out so that we protect it for those who need it. And that's the biggest key. So from what I've heard so far, it's not planning on going anywhere. It's just planning on, we're gonna find a way to fix the problem that we have on the other side, so it's not costing the state as much, and we still take care of the most vulnerable that are supposed to be on it.
And one other thought about that, I'm sorry I forgot, is that if we do continue to make these cuts, where is it gonna shift? These people are not miraculously not gonna have disabilities. So where is it gonna shift? Right here to the counties. And so your property taxes are going to raise, because there's no other way. These people there is a responsibility through the government that says, from the federal, they say you have to provide some of this, whether you want to or not. It is there, it's reality, so it will shift. It just shifts the tax from the state coffers to the county. And so, and then that's right on you and me, all of us. And so that's why we have to do this prudently, responsibly, conservatively, but yet with the mindset that we care about our friends and our neighbors, because we do, and most of us do. And so that's where I'm at. And I forgot to make that point, because we have said, Governor, if we do this, then you're putting a tax on all the people, because their property taxes will in fact go up substantially because of it. So.
And Commissioner Lamar, you had your hand up, but I know Medicaid expansion was intended to help offset indigent costs and take some of that critical.
It was an essential piece of what helped the people of Idaho, 80,000 people, getting insurance for their first house. Getting rid of our catastrophic, the cat fund, where we pay, you all pay the first 11,000 of some person's medical costs, and then the state paying the rest of it. Whatever the issue are, there are too many issues I can't talk about of people in our community that needed public dollars because they didn't have health insurance. To go away from health insurance makes zero sense to me.
Well, and we don't.
If I'm sorry.
No.
And thank you, representatives, for being here. But if we're talking about cutting Medicare, if we're talking about cutting healthcare system for people, we need to look up, if we're trying to come up with $22 million and we just gave $50 million of public dollars to private schools, that's the solution right there. you reverse that problem first, in my opinion. Because conceptually, that's the waste and abuse when you're using public dollars. I mean, we really have to solve the problem starting with the Constitution of the state of Idaho, which is proper funding of the schools of the state, public schools of the state. And if we've got school districts all over the 44 counties of this state who are needing to run levies in order to finish funding public schools that hasn't been done yet by the state, then we've already started the problem by having property taxpayers pay for schools that are supposed to be ultimately funded by the state of Idaho. And we're out of whack. The conversation is going in the wrong direction. Appetite is not the right word. We need to solve problems. We need to just simply solve problems in Idaho. And we're not doing that. We're gonna start with the basics. And the issue that BJ brought up is a complete problem solver. We will solve the issues that local government is having in providing jails and whatever we need to do at the county level in order to meet our needs with a really make sense funding mechanism, the local option tax. And I know for a fact that next week, the Idaho Association of Counties and the Idaho Sheriff's Association would love to sit down with Brandon and work on the exact language of that bill so we can get it passed. I mean, we need to work with the leadership to get the exact language composed so everybody's fine with it and we can move it forward and make it happen this year. Because if we don't, we're not gonna solve the problems in Idaho. We need to, so it's all related. We just need to shift the conversation from appetite to solving problems. And I'm sorry that I'm so frustrated, but I am frustrated. For years I've been frustrated.
Right, I know you have, and he's not wrong, folks, he's not wrong that we want solutions. But as a legislator, I will tell you, the numbers that are important. 18, 36, and 1, you have to have 18 senators that will sign on to that. 36 representatives that will sign on and 1 governor who will sign the bill. And that is not as easy as it sounds, because when I first got in, I'm like, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, and then all of a sudden, all these people, I'm like, why do you think this is a bad idea? This is, I'm a solutions-driven person, and so I have been frustrated with that, but in reality, we have to get those numbers to get it across the line. So, but thank you. I understand and I hear your frustration, and I hear it, so.
And Commissioner Lamar, I would be happy to sit down with you. I mean, I'm always happy to sit down. I sit down with all kinds of people, and that's one of the things that brings me into other people that are actually supporting me and whatnot. One thing I do want to bring up, and they mentioned it in the court yesterday, because you brought up the $50 million for the school funding. And they brought it up in court yesterday. They said, well, what about the launch program? Now, the launch program is wildly liked in Idaho. It just is, we looked at the numbers, they're wildly liked. But then you look at the school choice tax credit, where the second it opened, they had 3,400 people automatically jump in, which means it's probably wildly liked as well. So we gotta balance that out and figure that side of it out. But yeah, I'd be happy to sit down and talk about the local options tax.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yes, along these same lines, I would like to know what legislation you both are going to put forth to the legislature to help solve problems.
So I have several bills that I think could help. And we have a coalition of legislators wildly supporting launch. Launch is totally different than the voucher program or tax credit, whatever we are gonna call it, because K-12 is what it speaks to in the Constitution. These are post-secondary dollars. So I don't see it as apples to apples, but there are so many challenges, and I am putting forth legislation in the Medicaid to protect programs, to try to save money there. We will do everything we can to save the launch program, and if we have to bring legislation to save it, if there's some changes that they want, I've been hearing that there might be, so we need to sit down at the table, because it is wildly supported in the state, and we need to keep it that way. We have kids that are in fact benefiting, our families are benefiting, and these will be taxpayers in a very short time when they can go through a 2-year program and they can get to work in Idaho, for Idaho. It's just makes sense, and so I am bringing legislation there, and I know that the two huge problems, and Tom is right, we could just say, okay, we're gonna pull that, but that is just not gonna happen right now, and we need to wait and see what happens with the court, and hopefully we have a decision before the end of the session so we can make decisions. So those are the two areas that I can say that I'm bringing legislation to try to help, is to preserve launch and to find ways to cut our budget in Medicaid or Medicare where we can, but not on the backs of the individuals. And I have a piece of legislation to bring back the ACT program, and because I think it's that important for our communities and for their safety as well as the communities. So, thank you.
Thank you, and this year has been kind of interesting for me. So I've got a couple of different things I'm working on. I'm working on some stuff with the DMV, or with the Department of Transportation, ITD, to try and, the way I look at things when it comes to the government, it's what is our proper role? One of it is the roads, making sure that we're taking care of that. So one of those is I'm working with the Department of Transportation on. The other one I'm working with the county prosecutors. I've talked to Bill Thompson here, as well as down in Nez Perce. We're working on, they've got an issue with, in the smaller communities, not the bigger communities, but in the smaller communities, when we have someone who's got some mental disabilities and how they handle that. We're putting people right back out on the road because they can't hold on to them long enough to have them diagnosed, and we can't put them in the hospitals. So we're working on that legislation as well. So other than that, this whole session is about budgets with me. I'm just focused on the budgets. I'm sitting there looking at, we got an 800-page book that we're going through. And I got to go through, I've only got a couple of budgets that I'm focused on. One of them is the health and welfare budget. And so it is really a deep dive that I have to take into that. So as far as that goes, those are the only two proposals that I really have. I had a couple of other ideas. Other legislators called up and says, hey, I'm planning on doing this. I said, okay, take it and run with it. But that's for them to talk about, because like I said, I can't talk about legislation if it's not mine. So, but that's what I'm working on so far.
And we are very fortunate to have Representative Mitchell on JFAC. I think it's always important that we have district representation. So,
well, I think the other thing is that I'm also on the broadband committee, which is really helping out for our areas on the broadband stuff. So,
yeah. So again, just quickly segue, Senator Guthrie, Senate State Affairs introduced Senate concurrent resolution on capping the number of proposed pieces of legislation. Any given legislator could introduce up to like 10, because again, there's always a continual growth. I think last year was 1,378 pieces of legislation. So again, it's interesting. I think Legislative Services Office already prepared 179 drafts since the session started, but neither of you have used that system, and I appreciate that. And I think you stay focused on what matters. So
I do want to say, bring that in. That's great to bring that in, because I did kind of abuse our LSO the other day. I brought the concurrent resolution about America 250. I brought it out. Everyone was good with it. Ran through committee. Committee sent it the second reading. Everyone was happy with it. I got up the floor and someone says, "We got a problem with trees," and she's one of them that voted for him. Oh, gosh. So I went down to LSO. I said, because we were trying to get this done by the 22nd. So I'm down to LSO. Can you give me this today? I've got to get it back into committee tomorrow. So we did do it. We pulled it off. But yeah, it was. I did put them under a little bit of stress for a little while.
They do good work.
They do great work.
Yeah.
Great work.
Yeah. Okay, question over here, and then we're close to wrapping up with some kind of closing comments.
Lori, Brandon, thanks for being here and putting the time in and coming out. Let's do appreciate it. Daughter respectfully, as you know, and Maeve was like, oh, she couldn't make it this morning, so she says hi. Thank you also for your support of HB 93. You know, it's disproportionately impactful here in Moscow and surrounding area with all the kids and families that take advantage of alternate schools. So appreciate the support there. I was one of those early morning people, so the site was pretty good. Great. We've talked a lot with all those kids. We've talked a lot about things that matter for kids the next 10 years, houses, schools. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about any priority or how you're seeing priorities around economic development to drive revenue of the state, you know, as well as our cost-cutting measures, and if there's any particular things you see there about bringing more jobs to North Idaho, continue to improve the roads, continue to improve airports. It's difficult to get down to Boise a little bit, as I'm sure you guys know. So anything on the horizon in this session for economic development and to drive job growth?
Well, I haven't seen a lot on the pure economic development of, you know, we've talked incentives. The governor said to me when I said, we need to look at that, Governor, because there are people that need, you know, we want jobs. He said, they're coming to Idaho in droves. I said, well, let's talk about that for a minute, because the jobs, where are they going in these big, you know, microns and data centers, and, you know, that's all in the Treasure Valley. So I said, maybe we need to incentivize some of our rural areas. And he has a new person in charge of rural economic development. And so I'm very hopeful that they are going to propose at some point. I don't think you'll see it this legislative session. But I have a liquor license bill that I mentioned earlier that I think could help drive some economic development. They don't really put retail in that as a pure economic development, but in Lewiston, for instance, we have had one new liquor license in 40 years in Lewiston, because we are not growing. We are not, so we cannot get into with the quota system that they have set up. And I have fought this since before I was in the legislature, because it is not set up to be a fair system across the board. And so I'm working with a couple of lobbyists who don't even have a client. They just they know this is a problem. I don't think we'll get rid of the quota system this year, but what I'm proposing is that we have some additional opportunity that either our cities or our counties, we haven't got that sorted out, could have the opportunity to say, we're gonna grant you a liquor license and give that power to our local people to make that decision. It may be down in Rexburg, the county says, we don't want any more liquor licenses. Okay, Moscow, Latah County, Nez Perce County. We tried very hard. We were gonna bring a Buffalo Wild Wings, and they wanted to come to Lewiston, but they couldn't come because they couldn't get a liquor license. So even to buy one for $200,000. So that's a little bit of the thinking outside the box. There was a bill introduced at the very end of session just to get a bill number, and so we're taking that and running with it and trying to make some tweaks. But I am very hopeful that we will see some legislation which then could help businesses in Moscow and restaurants in Moscow that can't compete with a restaurant that actually has a liquor license. Now, some of the big restaurant folks, the Hagedorns of the world, are not going to be happy. And so I've talked with their lobbyists and said, let's sit down and see where you can get some concessions. And because I said, if I can get a hearing, I'm running with it. So I'd love your input so that we can work together and find a solution that would work for everyone. But it's just not working the way it's set up, particularly for our communities that are not growing like they are down in the Treasure Valley. So thanks. I know we're about out of time. Okay.
Brendan?
Just real quick, I won't take too much time, but I think she's right. I don't think we're gonna see a whole lot this year on that. One of the things that I've really been focused on is the University of Idaho, because they are a big driver here locally, and a lot of the research that they're doing, so that's kind of what I've been focused on, is working on that stuff. But other than that, I don't think we're gonna see a whole lot this year.
Just quickly, Florida Governor DeSantis was in town this week. About a balanced budget amendment. 28 states already interested. Will we see something go on in Idaho?
No, there are 3 different lobby groups that are running around the Capitol, and wherever you go, one pops up. And we've got one on balanced budget, we've got one on term limits, and then there's the convention estates, and they have several things in there. There you go. So, I mean, personally, I signed and said, you know what, if you can get the states, let's take a look at this. But I personally think if we can get the attention of Congress, that we have enough oomph behind us, maybe they'll make a decision. But, you know, is that wishful thinking? Probably. Is it Pollyanna-ish? Probably, but our Congress really is who should act, so.
Well, and I think on that same note, Ronald Reagan was in favor of it, in favor of the Convention of the States. And what he actually said was, it will send a message to Congress that we're done. We're done. And so this summer, I actually went out to Indianapolis for the Convention of the States and got to see kind of what they all have in the background and what they're trying to work on. And I think it's a good idea for us to send a message. It's time to fix things in DC, because I think that's where the biggest problem is as far as our debt goes. We're at $38 trillion now. So it just keeps on going up, so anyway.
Well, thank you both. So closing comments and thoughts.
Okay, well, you know, again, you know how to get a hold of me, you know where I'm at, and I love hearing from you. I will put a sheet out maybe in the back somewhere maybe we'll put it up here or over by the donuts, I don't know, wherever you all want. If you would like to get our newsletters, put your name on there, and I'll share these emails with Representative Mitchell as well, because we really welcome your comments, and I try my darndest to get back to you, whether it's a real short, but if I need to think about it, I'll get back to you later, whatever. But I do listen and I do hear you, because I am a representative of all of the people and not just a small portion of or only the Republican Party, that we are all in this community together and we need to work together to find solutions. And so thank you. If anyone's interested, I have a big announcement I'm gonna make after this is all over, and so if you wanna stay, perfect. If you wanna leave, that's fine too. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. I so appreciate when you guys get up in the morning and come up here, and because it means the world to us to hear what is on your mind, what is the most important thing that you are wrestling with, because those are the things that we want to put forward. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And I think I would echo a lot of that. You know, we're not perfect. We go out there, we try to do everything that we can the right way. So we try to listen to all of our constituents, and we have to balance that out. So definitely put your email down, reach out to us. If I don't get back to you quick, understand that our state just put in a new gray mail box, and a lot of those are hitting gray mail, and I only check that once a week or so. So just be understanding about that, but I try to respond to all the emails as well as I get them in. But yeah, definitely keep us in the loop. We're not, I know business, so when they put me on budgets, I know how to do a business budget, but we're talking $1 trillion budgets, and it's not like mine. Mine's definitely a lot smaller than that. So anyway, but I appreciate everybody coming out. We drive back here from Boise or fly back here from Boise each weekend to try and do stuff like this. So I thank you all.
So with that, let's thank our legislators.